You are traveling to another train of thought, one not from this century and challenging the status quo. You are now entering the paradigm shift. Well, good morning. This is the paradigm shift on the Cerberus Radio Network. And if you listened to the show last night, you heard the story of kind of how we got to the new name. It was a quite an ordeal this last week trying to pick a new name. Every time we'd come up with one we thought was just the best name ever, you'd go and Google it, and somebody else had already come up with the best name ever. So we ended up in some Greek mythology with the three-headed dog and the guardian. And so when you hear the break today, you'll hear that protecting liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. So that's where we are at now. We've changed names. We changed names. We really did not talk about it much last night. We kind of touched on it slightly. When we first started this whole endeavor, it was kind of just more of it was kind of a lark. We picked the name kind of on it just was being silly. It was just going to be a hobby, and it still is a hobby because none of us make anything off of it. Matter of fact, it costs quite a lot of money every year just to buy the radio time on radio.co and everything else that goes involved into doing this production. So it's still a hobby, but we wanted to be taken a little bit more seriously and not be that lark of a name, and it served us well. We were that name for a year. We learned a lot, and if you listen to our very first one, which I hope you didn't because it was really, really awful, you saw that we kind of learned the business a little bit over the year, and we actually got a little better at doing this. Now, are we professionals? No, we're still amateurs at this. Maybe someday we'll be better than amateurs. Maybe we'll be semi-pro. But at this time, we wanted to grow this and reach more people. Hopefully, you'll notice a different tone, that we may tone it down a little bit. Just the passion's still there. A lot of times people think you're angry because you're passionate about the subject matter. And a lot of times, sometimes that does come across as being angry, but it isn't. We believe strongly in what we talk about here. And in just a moment, we're going to get back into Brutus. Brutus 1. Matter of fact, we're going to read the last 4 paragraphs, and we'll be done with Brutus 1. And next week, I'm not quite sure where we're going to go. I don't think it'll be Patrick Henry quite yet. I think we're probably going to go with someone else, maybe. Because some of these others, we don't know exactly who they were. It's thought we may jump into some of the ones that are thought to be attributed to Governor George Clinton of New York. It's really interesting. Brutus is Yates, and he was from New York. He was a politician in New York, and now we might go into the next one, and it might be another politician from New York. It's amazing. You look at New York today. You would never think that these were a lot of the men in New York were the ones that were leading the charge to defeat the new Constitution, to remain under the Articles of Confederation. Had they succeeded, I think there would be a different feeling or a different outcome today. The general government would not be what it is today. We would be a lot better off because it would be a lot smaller. They wouldn't be able to do what they've done. So anyway, we changed the name so we could just be taken a little bit more seriously. We hope that you enjoy the new name. It is a little bit more militant. It also it fits in a little bit with our with Suzanne and her bent towards preparedness. And I know that eventually, here after we kind of get settled back down, I know she wanted to do some more canning stuff. Suzanne has a wealth of knowledge about being prepared and having, food and water and different things. And we talk about a lot of those things on our shows as well. And if I have time today, I might even touch on a little bit today myself. So we wanted something that kind of went into the preparedness world, and also the political uh, things that we talk about here all the time. So anyway, that's and you also notice that I did start 5 minutes early. So if you were listening to Sean to the Brush Fires of Freedom, I'm sorry I cut him off, but I need this 5 minutes to make the turnaround. So when Suzanne is on at 10 a.m., we can go sharp at 10 a.m. If I go right to 10, it's going to be five after before we can start her up. So we are started a few minutes early. So, and this show will end about there'll be about 5 minutes of a replay on Radio Co. And then it'll pick right up at about almost exactly 10 o'clock. Suzanne will pop in and we'll start Suzanne's show. And I'm sure you'll be able to enjoy that. And also, if you're ever interested in joining on the conversation we're having, if you want to talk about Brutus or any of the other subjects we're talking about, keep it current to what we're talking about. The phone number is 717-467-1736. We only have one line, so if someone's on the phone, it's going to be busy. But call in if you're interested in chiming in on the subject matter. So anyway, let's jump back into Brutus again. This is Robert Yates, a politician from New York. He was selected to go to the Philadelphia Convention to amend the Articles of Confederation. And when he got there, they presented a different plan that eventually wound up in the Constitution. He and Jim Lansing left the convention early. They left in July. When they saw where this was all going, they went back to New York and told Governor Clinton that he needed to oppose this Constitution. It was an awful thing, and it was going to lead us down a path that would destroy the states. And that's why Yates started writing under this pen name of Brutus. And these were posted in the newspapers of the day. And it was really interesting. For those of you who haven't been following this conversation, today we look at the media and we say, how they kind of change the facts and kind of mold it to what they want. It really wasn't much different then, because Yates and Henry and all of the others that opposed the Constitution were incorrectly and maliciously called anti-federalists, because it misinformed the public, because they weren't the anti-federalists. The so-called anti-federalists were indeed the federalists. They wanted strong states. The ones that they were calling federalists, Madison and Hamilton, especially Hamilton, were actually nationalists. They wanted a strong national government, one that was over the states. And at every time that they brought that up at the Philadelphia Convention, it was voted down. The other delegates there wanted nothing to do with a strong national government. Yet, that's precisely what we ended up with because of the Constitution. And that was what Yates was writing about here in Brutus 1. So let's get right back into it. In a republic of such vast extent as the United States, the legislature cannot attend to the various concerns and wants of its different parts. Can Washington, D.C. truly know what's best for a Suzanne Sherman in the Wasatch Range in Utah, or a Dwayne Stovall in Texas, or a Jeff Johnson in Pennsylvania? No, they don't know what's best for us. Yet they lord over us, and they tell us what's best for us. We need this, we need that, we must do this. We have to give them money so they can do that or another. So Brutus was right. And when he's talking about the vastness, then he's only talking about 13 colonies. Now, okay, Virginia was a massive state. It covered West Virginia all into Ohio. Virginia was a massive state. And that covered a huge, huge territory. But at that time, it was only 13 states. And it was a very large area. Now, it goes to the Pacific Ocean, from the Mexican border to the Canadian border. It's a truly massive state. Now, can 535 guys and gals, our little prince and princesses in Washington, D.C., in the legislature, and 9 black dress wearing connected lawyers in a Supreme Court and a president in the White House know what's best for all 320 million of us? No, they can't. And so Brutus was right. Okay, let's see. Let's get back into this. It cannot be sufficiently numerous to acquaint with the local condition and the wants of the different districts. And if it could, it is possible it should have. It is impossible it should have sufficient time to attend to and provide for all of the variety of cases of this nature that would be continually arising. In an extensive republic, the great officers of government would soon become above the control of the people and abuse their powers to the purpose of the aggrandizing themselves and oppressing them. So what he's saying is that they will soon be too big for us to control. They will make sure that they're lining their own pockets at our expense and oppressing us. Is that the case today? Oh yeah. Call your congressman. Here's a challenge. Call your congressman today to tell him you want to talk to him about something, and see if you can talk to your little prince from your district. I would lay a wager that unless you have a guy that has absolutely no time, that has all the time in the world on his hands, he is not going to talk to you. You're going to listen. You're going to get some office flunky that's going to tell you, oh, okay, well, I'll let him know, and hang up, and that phone call just went into the garbage heap. They do not care what you want. They only care about their own aggrandizement. How is it that 535 little prince and princesses go to Washington, D.C.? Maybe they have moderate means. They might have, a few $100,000, maybe even $1 million in the bank. Yet they'll leave there multimillionaires. How is that possible? Unless they're there for their own self-aggrandizement, as Brutus says, as Yeats says. You look at find one there that isn't massively rich today after being in Washington, D.C. And on top of that, they're going to go out there with a 6-figure pension. My mom lives up, just a little bit from here. She lives on a very fixed income. It isn't anywhere near 6 figures. Matter of fact, they haven't even given the people on Social Security a cost of living increase in years. They can't afford it because they need to line their own pockets. And that's why we chose the Cerberus, because we need to start protecting ourselves and our liberties and freedoms from the tyrants in Washington, D.C. The trust committed to the executive offices in a country of the extent of the United States must be various and of magnitude. The command of all the troops and the Navy of the Republic, the appointment of officers, the power of pardoning offenses, the collecting of all public revenues, and the power of expending them with a number of other powers, must be lodged and exercised in every state in the hands of a few. So all of these powers are now being taken from the states and put into the hands of a few in Washington, D.C. When these are attended with great honor and emolument, as they always will be in large states, so as greatly to interest men to pursue them, and to the proper objects for ambitious and designing men, such men will be ever ruthless in their pursuit after them. Try to buy a Senate seat today, because that's what you have to do. You have to have perhaps hundreds of millions of dollars to buy that seat today. Why? And why would someone be willing to spend the millions and millions of dollars necessary? Look at Trump. How many millions of dollars did he spend of his own money, and probably of public money as well, to attain this office? Maybe Trump's not one of the better ones because I don't know Donald Trump, but the history of the last president shows that it is about self-promotion. It is about that person getting ahead. Okay, so they will use the power when they have acquired it to the purpose of gratifying their own interest and ambition, and it is scarcely possible in a very large republic to call them to account for their misconduct or prevent their abuse of power. Okay. Hillary Clinton. She has all kinds of different things we could talk about. You could talk about the uranium deal. You could talk about Benghazi. There's so many things we can talk about. Has she ever been called into account? And is there a likelihood she ever will? No, she never will. I guarantee you. I don't care how much they talk about Trey Gowdy and how much they say he's gonna take care of this. There's not going to be a thing done about it. Why? Because they can't go after one of them, because they all do it. And if they go after one, then they indict themselves, and they do indict all the rest of them. They'll never do anything to her. This is all political theater. They get in front of the cameras and talk big, make you think that they're fighting for you, when in reality, there's nothing going to happen. It is all just for show. So they can go to they can send out their letters and say, just send us some more money so we can fight these people. We need just one more Republican. We need just one more conservative black-dressed lawyer on the Supreme Court. We need this. Okay. We were told we need the House. They got the House. Now they need the Senate. They got the Senate. Oh, we can't do anything until we get the presidency. They got the president, the House, and the Senate. Have they repealed Obamacare? Nope. Have they cut spending? Nope. They're talking the story that they're going to cut taxes. Are they actually going to cut taxes? Nope. They're all two sides of the same coin. Republicans, Marxist. Democrats, Marxist. Marxist. They all are quite well behind the 10 pillars of communism. And I talked about that last week. Go look up the 10 pillars and find one that they have not instituted. Progressive tax, got it. Public schools, got it. Control of the workforce, try to work without their permission. Don't have a social security number, not working, not legally. All right. It's been 20 minutes. I'm going to take a break. Like I said, I started 5 minutes early. We're going to end 5 minutes early. So we are 20 minutes into the show. Thank you for listening again. And we will be right back after a short break that I don't have set up at this moment, obviously, because I'm reaching down over the other computer here, and you can see that. All right. This is the Cerberus Radio Network. I almost said 18th century ideas for 21st century thinkers. It still fits, but we are protecting liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny.
You won't disappear when you wear Tail Gunner Apparel custom camo clothing and all natural bath and body products for women and men too. And don't forget to ask about their line of custom home products and bed scarves. Look awesome and feel even better. Tail Gunner Apparel on Facebook at Tail Gunner Apparel and at tailgunnerapparel.etsy.com. That's tailgunnerapparel.etsy.com.
Camouflage ain't nothing doesn't go with camouflage. You can't blend in the country. You can't stand out in the fashion world.
Cerberus Radio Network, protecting liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. Well, welcome back to the Paradigm Shift here on the Cerberus Radio Network. I'm going to just blast through these last two paragraphs of Brutus, and we can move on to some other things. These are some of the reasons by which it appears that a free republic cannot long subsist over a country of the great extent of these states. If then this new constitution is calculated to consolidate the 13 states into one, as it evidently is, it ought not to be adopted. Though I am of opinion that is a sufficient objection to this government to reject it, that it creates the whole union into one government under the form of a republic. Yet, if this objection was obviated, these are exceptions to it, which are so material and fundamental that they ought to determine every man who is a friend of the liberty and happiness of mankind not to adopt it. I beg the candid and dispassionate attention of my countrymen while I state these objections. They are such as have obstructed themselves upon my mind upon a careful attention to the matter, and such as I sincerely believe are well-founded. There are many objections of small moment, of which I shall take no notice. Perfection is not to be expected in anything that is the production of man. And if I did not in my conscience believe that this scheme was defective in the fundamental principles, in the foundation upon which a free and equal government must rest, I would hold my peace. So that's Brutus 1. Took me that long to get through one article written by one man in objection to the Constitution. Was he, in all these matters, correct? Was his concern about a standing army correct? Since the war on terror began, they spent well over $5 trillion on war, just that war. And that's not even including what they spend annually on quote unquote defense. We are now, like I said last night, we're already 20 trillion in debt. There, on Facebook, there's all these conversations, and you always get one that says how well the Constitution is working so well. Well, yeah, we're 20 trillion in debt. We have courts telling us that we must accept men in the same bathroom with our wives and daughters. We have these black-dressed lawyers telling us that Christians don't have any right to exercise their religion as they see fit, that they must be subservient to homosexual marriage and must participate in it or will destroy your businesses. Oh my goodness. What else? I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. Brutus was absolutely correct. And this last part about the size, it really does come down to that we are completely out of scale. We have 535 people trying to supposedly representing 320 million people. And I am going to go back to an article that Suzanne and I were talking about last week, and I'm going to read the closing paragraph in that because it does relate to what Brutus was saying. And this was that article on if American federalism were like Swiss federalism, there would be 1,300 states. See, that's the issue. It's the scale of what we have. That Brutus is talking about that vast America and the inability of some few little people down in Washington, D.C. to rule us all. And that's what they're trying to do, is rule us. And again, it goes back to the 10 pillars. We are a socialist nation. We are a Marxist nation, and we have a bunch of Marxists that are running us. They central plan everything. You can't even look at this government and say it's not the same thing that the Soviets had. They micromanage everything. You want to run a business, get permission from the king, from our Marxist leaders in Washington. Want to open a gravel pit? You better jump through their hoops. It's going to take you a couple of 3 years to jump through all the hoops that they set up before you can even go into business of having a gravel pit. Want to put a little pond on your property? You better not, or they'll fine you $75,000 a day because you didn't jump through their hoops and obey their edicts from Washington, D.C. When we look at the differences in size and scope of political and electoral jurisdictions, we find that in many cases, U.S. jurisdictions are 10 to 20 times the size of what are in Switzerland. And when some of their local cantons, their local representative, which would be like your state representative, some of them are representing as few as 350 people. Do you think those 350 people know their representative personally? That they can go, yo, Joe, we're not happy with you doing that. There might be his next door neighbors. Now, who's your state representative? Can you knock on his door? Can you even go to his office and knock on his door? For the most part, I can tell you my state representative, I know right where his office is. I'll go down there. He won't be there. If I went to his office over in Wellsboro, more than likely, he ain't going to be there. And you know what? Even if he is, I'm not getting past his secretary. Because why does he need to? He's unopposed every time he runs. Every time. There's no Democrat that runs against him. So what does he care? He doesn't need us. He's going to win no matter what. No one's going to run against them. These vast differences in geography and demographics may highlight some of the realities that underpin many of the political and institutional differences that divide Americans and the Swiss. Both the United States and Switzerland employ a federal structure. I will take, this is probably one place I take exception to this article. We are not a federal system. I know that's what they call it. We are not a federal system. It is a national government. If it was federal, the states would have control. The states would have a veto over anything the federal government does. We were reading that article last night. Let's see if I can find that real quick. No, I'm not going to even bother. I only read 1/3 of the sentence, and that was as far as I got in the article. It was about Medicaid. And the first sentence was that some dude that runs their Medicaid down there in Mississippi was asking permission from the federal government. And I didn't even finish the sentence. It was just first third. We're federal? No. We have a national government that does what it wants for its own self-aggrandizement, as Brutus says. It's not for you. They're there to get rich. They're there to keep their power. They're there to get reelected so they can keep getting more wealth and keep stealing your wealth to give to themselves. It's all about them. It's not there to represent us. They're there to represent their own interests, and to make sure that their family members are in a position to become massively wealthy. So that's the only place I take a little exception to this article, because we're not federal. You can't possibly come up with anything that says we're federal. All right. In many ways, however, the Swiss political system is far more decentralized than the American. There is no single executive in Switzerland, for example, and a policy continues to be highly decentralized, with cantonal governments exercising large amounts of control and influence within the fields of naturalization, culture, public finance, and healthcare. The cantons control everything over there. It is truly a federal system. If the one canton does something, it doesn't mean the next canton has to do it. If they want to have a single-payer healthcare in the Zurich canton, they could. And the other one next door can have it as a complete free market solution, where the doctors, you go to your doctor and you work out a deal. Because it's cash. So over there, it might be really expensive because, the government's involved in it, and over here, it probably could be cheaper. That's federal. What we have here is not federal. When they tell you you got to buy insurance, and they pretty much don't give you very many choices because they chase all the choices out of the marketplace. And I know Suzanne's very up to date on this because she's directly impacted by all this. We aren't federal. If they're planning from Washington, D.C., that is no different than if the USSR did it. Let's see. Okay, we got a few more minutes. All right. Moreover, when we speak of the cantonal level in Switzerland, we are really referring to what an American would recognize as the local level of politics. You would probably look at it more as your county. That would be what a canton would be here. It would be more like your county, and there would be a number of representatives from each county in your canton. And so instead of calling them a canton, you call them a county, and there would be so many of them that it'd be probably your neighbor right down the street. Like, I live in a very rural county. If we had a couple hundred legislators that are representatives, I don't want to call them legislators because we really don't need legislation. We just need them to go there and represent us when there's something arises that needs to be accomplished. So there may be a couple hundred from this county, and from this area here, it'd be someone right around me. I mean, we wouldn't be talking somebody that lives, 2 counties over or whatever. It'd be someone that was right here, probably in this township that I live in, which is part of the bigger county. All right, let's go. On top of this, the political representation is democratic by modern American standards, but not necessarily historical American standards, with many cantonal legislators representing perhaps only 1,500 residents in many cases. The implications of this reality are significant, given the small and local nature of government and the smallness of the electoral districts. Voters have a completely different relationship with government institutions. For example, when a local government amenities are funded largely by one local cantonal government, this means that government services, including social benefits like healthcare subsidies, are funded not by some other anonymous taxpayer living hundreds or even thousands of miles away. A small cantonal size means taxpayer-funded amenities are funded by one's neighbors and others living nearby with whom one is likely to interact peacefully on the pages are stuck together there, daily basis. In cases like this, it's more difficult to see democratic policies as a matter of getting as much as one can get out of some distant, faceless oppressor. When important political institutions are close to home and at a human scale, one might feel more inclined to take an attitude of stewardship toward one's community rather than an attitude of take the money and run. That was what Brutus was talking about today in Brutus, at the end of Brutus 1. That we've got to the point where we have rulers that are so far away from us that we have people that have the attitude, take the money and run. Because it's not their money. Well, some of it is, but very little. Who cares if they're fleecing millions of other people? Just as long as I get mine. I'll tell you what, this is how we know that we're in big trouble. Try to repeal Obamacare today. And watch the screaming and yelling. Don't take what's mine. I got to get mine and I'm running. I don't care whose money you got to steal to do it, but that's mine. Don't take it. We have been indoctrinated very well by the public school system. One of the 10 pillars, one of the 10 pillars of communism, of public education, run by the government. We've been so indoctrinated into this Marxist mindset. Most people don't even realize how much of a Marxist they are. Don't take mine. The government knows me that. That's why we need to guard liberty and freedom, because there are so few of us left that actually want to be free people. Most people just want what's theirs. Don't take mine. All right. This is the Cerberus Radio Network, protecting liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. And again, I'm so busy talking that I didn't even have it set up. We'll be back after this short break for the last segment, and then we're going to go right to the Wasatch Report with Suzanne Sherman, live at 10 a.m. So this one will be over about 5 of. All right, here's the break.
sex happy, that's why we're taught. Well, I've traded this one like an old honky tonk. Greasy cheeseburgers.
Congressman Paul, are these two men in the middle insufficiently conservative for you?
Well, I think that the problem is nobody's to define what being conservative means.
Go
And
ahead.
I think that is our problem. Conservatives means we have smaller government and more liberty. And yet, if you ask what have we done, I think we've lost our way completely. Our rhetoric is still pretty good. But when we get in charge, we expand the government. You talk about Dodd-Frank, but we gave Sarbanes-Oxley. We gave debts as well, you know, when we're in charge. So if it means limited government, you have to ask a basic question: what should the role of government be? The founders asked that question, had a revolution, wrote a constitution. And they said the role of government ought to be to protect liberty. It's not to run a welfare state and not to be the policeman of the world. And so if you're going to conservative, how can you be conservative and cut food stamps, but you won't cut spending overseas? There's not a nickel or penny that anybody will cut on the conservative side overseas spending, and we don't have the money. They're willing to start more wars. So I say if you're conservative, you want small government across the board, especially in personal liberty. What's wrong with having the government out of our personal lives? So this is what we have to decide: what conservative means, what limited government means. And I have a simple suggestion. We have a pretty good guide, and if we follow the Constitution, government would be very small, and we would all be devoted conservatives.
Cerberus Radio Network, protecting liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny.
Has it been 10 years since we said I do? I've always heard marriage made one seem like two. But you.
Well, welcome back to the final segment of the Paradigm Shift on the Cerberus Radio Network. Oh boy, how I miss Congressman Dr. Paul. What did he say the primary goal of government is? He said it's liberty. He got it. He was one of the few that got it. I mean, I really don't see anyone out there getting in front of the microphone saying that we need less government and we need more liberty. I mean, who is it? Who's saying that? I mean, seriously, who? I don't know any. Marxists. Doesn't matter. Okay, well, let's go to the bizarre and the odd. Enough seriousness for a few minutes. Let's get into something a little bit more bizarre. I mean, I don't know what to call this. You'll like it when you hear it. An elderly woman accused of training her 65 cats to steal from neighbors. I saw that. I had to get this one. So I had to read it. I mean, once I saw that, I was hooked. I'm reading this. Suzanne, have you trained your cat to steal your neighbor's stuff? I hope not. They'll catch you.
No, people don't do well when they do that here. Humans nor animals.
Okay. Well, yeah, I know. I saw the last bandit that was trying to steal stuff from your porch. I think it's a hat now, right?
Did I tell you? You know what happened to that thing?
What's that?
Okay, I won't take too long, but I had a friend come over with his wife to pick up a deer that I had some deer meat to donate, and he was one of my bushcrafting friends. That show, as you know, has been filmed right out here in pretty much my backyard, and he's one of the participants, so I can't reveal his name, but it airs on the 15th, and he'll be coming on the show. So I said, come on and get this deer, and then we're talking, and I said, by the way, I shot a raccoon this morning. It was a really good shot right behind the ear. The pelt's in good shape. Would you like it? Yeah, sure. So I go back and I'm trudging through the field with this dead raccoon in my hand. I'm wearing flip-flops. It was quite a scene. And I said, here you go. And you know you live in a cool place and have cool friends when they're delighted when you bring them a dead raccoon. So I get a picture later of this raccoon, the hindquarters in a crock pot. And he's making chili for the church. And then I get another picture where he had showed me where we were cutting this deer up. He had actually taken a hinge from a garage door and made a scalpel sharp knife out of it. Well, out of the handle, he made the handle with one of the femurs from this raccoon. So this raccoon lives on. Anyway, a little digression there. But isn't it cool? Yeah. Nothing's wasted.
Well, good. Well, I knew you were having some bandit issues there. So, but anyway, this is from Columbus, Ohio. An 83-year-old woman was arrested this morning, accused of training dozens of cats to steal jewelry and other valuables from her neighbors. The Columbus Police Department opened an investigation on Ruth Gregson and her 65 cats in October after several neighbors reported small objects being stolen from their homes. Several victims reported being visited by Mrs. Gregson's cats before noticing the disappearance of several shiny objects, like valuable cutlery and pieces of jewelry. Despite their skepticism, when I read this, I was like, oh, yeah, right. She trained cats to steal stuff. So, okay, despite their skepticism, investigators began a surveillance operation. They had their van out there and they had their cameras, parabolic mics. They're watching her, watching the cats. Can you just picture this? This is so absurd. Anyway, began their surveillance operation and were amazed by what they discovered. According to the Columbus Police Chief Kim Jacobs, dozens of cats were constantly coming and going, bringing home anything that shined. She was like Fagin and Oliver Twist, but she was using cats as thieves instead of children. In less than 3 hours of surveillance, the detectives saw the cats bring home more than 100 objects. Upon searching Mrs. Gregson's house, investigators found, ready for this? This is where it gets absolutely bizarre. They found $650,000 worth of jewelry and precious metals among piles of worthless, shiny baubles. Okay. I told you, this is completely bizarre. $650,000 these cats stole. Oh, goodness gracious. Why don't I own a cat? I have a dog. Chief Jacobs said the elderly woman confessed to training her cats to steal, saying the felines had to earn their meals. She would only feed animals if they brought home valuables, so the animals had to steal every day in order to survive. Most were voluntary malnourished, so they would easily gain the neighbors' pity and allowed inside their houses. According to Columbus Police, Mrs. Gregson's animals could have stolen from more than 5,000 houses and apartments in the area, and investigators invite possible victims to contact them. While Mrs. Gregson is the first person in American history to be accused of training cats to steal, this isn't the first time that animals were trained to commit crimes. So we have a cat burglar. Now let's see what else we have. In 2009, a surveillance caught a monkey stealing hundreds of dollars worth of plants from a Texas nursery. Also, now people have their monkeys stealing stuff. At the time, the police and the store owners had hypothesized that the monkey had been trained to take the plants and hand them over a fence to a waiting human accomplice. In 2013, a Chicago court sentenced a man to 5 years in prison for training ferrets to steal cell phones and other from people on the streets on public buses. I told you, totally bizarre. So we have cats, monkeys, and ferrets being trained to steal for people. I had to do something a little bit fun. We're always constantly a little bit serious here. So I wanted to get kind of a humorous, strange story. I'll put that. I'm gonna have to file that in a strange but true file. I don't have one yet, but I guess I'm gonna have to start one. Strange but true. Oh goodness, I don't know if this is strange but true, but it's true. I don't know. 10 minutes, 9 minutes. I don't want to get into the LGBTQXL and NOP stuff. We've done that. We've been there, done that. All right. We talk about this often. And the other day, one of our friends on Facebook posted about a home invasion, and I posted about a local home invasion that had a completely different outcome. His home invasion, the homeowner shot and killed the home invader. In ours, the home invader killed the homeowner. That just happened about 2 weeks ago here locally. So even in your houses, you got to be practicing a little bit of situational awareness. If there's someone coming to your door, you don't know them, keep the door locked. Talk to them through the door. Don't let them in. If you don't know them, don't open the dang door. This is from Rochester, New York. Please, suspect shot by man he was attempting to rob. So someone was situationally aware and was armed. Again, I say if you own a firearm and you don't carry it with you, you don't own a firearm. What good is it doing sitting in your lockbox at home if you're out about and someone tries to rob you? You don't own a gun. You're just another victim waiting to happen. So anyway, an attempted robbery suspect was shot Friday night by the person police say he was trying to rob. Police say a city man was doing some repair work outside a home when he was approached by a man who brandished a gun and attempted to rob him. During the confrontation with there was an exchange of gunfire between the repairman and the robbery suspect, according to police. Police say the repairman is a licensed firearm owner. And again, this is New York. And I can show you my firearms license because it truly is just a license. Because on every firearms license in New York State, it lists every firearm pistol that you own. Long guns are not required to be licensed at this point, but I'm sure eventually they will be. The victim of the attempted robbery was not struck, but the suspect was shot at least once in the lower body. The suspect ran away, but was later dropped off at Rochester General Hospital with non-life-threatening injury. Non-life-threatening injury. Police say the suspect will remain under guard in the hospital until his release and will then face charges. Police say the most serious charge will be some degree of attempt assault. The name of the suspect has not been released yet. The investigation continues. That's why. Again, why one of the reasons why we pick Cerberus. We need to be guardians, guarding our own safety. And in this situation, an armed citizen stopped an armed bad guy with his legally owned firearm. We've had some discussion in the past about this recent Texas shooting that a legal firearms owner stopped an illegal firearms owner that was committing murder with his legally owned firearm. If you are not ready to respond, you are a victim. Suzanne, do you have any thoughts? I mean, this is up your alley again. We're in the prepping field here. If you wanted to chime in, you're certainly welcome to on this. Being prepared means you're prepared. I am not going to show you because that'd be brandishing it. But even sitting here, I am a concealed carrier, and I'm in my house.
That's the safest place to keep a weapon. People say, well, if you're in your home and especially if you have children, your firearms should be locked up separate from your ammunition. So now you get a home invader coming in and you say, whoa, wait, hold on. Let me figure out how to open my safe. Then I got to run to the other end of the house and get my ammunition. If you have kids in the house, the safest place for your firearm, so it's actually useful, particularly if you live in a place that is subject to that, which was my former home in California. My old neighborhood is being overrun with these incidents. The kids can't pick it up. It's on you if you need it immediately. People might think you're paranoid for having it on you. I'm reading an apocalyptic book right now, post-apoc book that Frank Horton, who's going to be coming on my show. This kind of goes over to the area of preparedness, but there's a statement in there that really resonates. It as family members are now reaping the benefits of his preparedness. They're saying what they really thought was an instant of paranoia was he was really just informed. Be informed, be prepared, be ready. There's nothing wrong with being ready. Hopefully you'll never need it, but if it's there, my son was driving home last night. 3 mountain lions were on the road right in front of him, about 30 feet. And he stopped and watched them leave. It was a mother and 2 of her babies. And I said, now do you see why you have a kit in your vehicle and you never get out of your car at night here? And then he said, you know what, I really need to have a firearm in the car. So now he gets it.
Right. And quite honestly, having lived in Colorado, and every year, at least one high school kid would be mauled and killed out in Colorado. I imagine it still goes on today. By mountain lions, they'd go out and run, like preparing for track or wherever, they'd be out running. And a cat sees prey. That's all they see. Cats are very, 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 very dangerous. I mean, they're pretty to look at, but I honestly do not ever want to see a cat in the wild because I'd rather see a bear, a black bear in this area, than see a cat. A black bear is more likely going to go the other way unless it's a mom and you've cornered her cub. Then you're in trouble. But again, if you're not prepared, to protect yourself, you aren't prepared. As I said earlier, if you have a firearm and it's at home, you don't own a firearm. It's useless to you.
Yeah, and it could be
this
a
guy was
multitude of situations. Out in public, out in the wilderness. You might need to fire the universal distress signal of 3 shots. You might be out of cell phone signal. You might be, a whistle might not be loud enough. You're going to reach out either if you need to touch someone or if they need to hear you. So I'm a huge supporter. A friend of mine, or my son actually, had one of his friends over yesterday, and he said, my dad asked me why you have so many guns, and they're into motorsports. And I said, why didn't you ask your dad if he'd ever go to a mechanic shop and hire him if he only had one tool to use?
Yeah. No, they're just tools, and I have multiple tools. It's they're at my disposal depending on what the situation is. You have shotguns, you have rifles, you have pistols. I mean, it's just they all have a different function. It's just like you have a different socket for every job. So, well, the music's playing. That means we are just about out of time, and we are just about out of time. Thank you, everyone, for listening. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Suzanne, for joining in. We are going to be live in 5 minutes with the Wasatch Report. Suzanne will be live. We don't have time to give a preview, Suzanne. We're truly up against the end.
Let's get at it. Thank
you for listening. Let's get out of here so we can get to Suzanne's show. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day. This is and was The Paradigm Shift on the Cerberus Radio Network.